Hello, Seventh-day Adventist world. This part is a part of the series of missed pieces in Adventism, and the idea is to look at some uh, things which could be missed in Adventism. I'm a Seventh-day Adventist myself, so I have nothing against Adventism. I totally hold all the fundamental beliefs what we have. However, I want to present and propose these new nuggets of light, if you will, to you. So, and yeah, I have to say that I have been a little depressed because so few people are interested in these things, in possible new light. But even if one person wants to hear something about, wants to study new things and test possible new light, then I'm happy. So this is for you, one person at least there. So this time I will be talking about a key for unlocking the prophecies of the Bible, apocalyptic prophecies especially. And this key is these kind of levels which we can find from the prophecies. So we will get into that. So I will read portions from my book, Global Deception and the Issue of Freedom, Apocalyptic Trumpets. So you will get an idea what I'm talking about. So I will go to this section of my book, Biblical Framework of Interpretation of the Seven Trumpets. This is from in page 46, and I'm going to page 47. I'm going to read from here. Sometimes a symbol can have a dual application. We're talking about symbols in apocalyptic prophecies. Firstly, the seven churches and the seven seals may have both a specific and general application. This was a quotation from Ranco's Seventh-day Adventist Bible Commentary, volume 7, page 775. Application to history. Secondly, even a specific application can be a dual phase fulfillment. For example, the little horn of Daniel 7 / the sea beast of Revelation 13 symbolize one entity, which is the Papacy. But this entity has two phases, before and after the healing of the mortal wound, although the entity stays the same. It is understandable that an argument of a dual phase fulfillment can easily make apocalyptic prophecies apparently applicable to a vast variety of world events if an interpreter is imaginative enough. Nevertheless, the Bible entails specific principles of interpretation which offer a framework that leaves out any interpretation that one can simply imagine. Before discussing more about the actual structure of the book of Revelation and hence of the trumpets itself, we look at this biblical framework of end-time prophecies in general, and we found some interpretive antecedents. We will start by briefly looking at the layered structures of the book of Daniel, the Revelation, and the Olivet Discourse of Jesus. So, the three stages of the beast. The book of Daniel is the Old Testament's grand jewel of apocalyptic prophecy. It reveals important truths about the cosmic conflict between good and evil. The book, at least its mainly apocalyptic portion, which is chapters 7 to 12, and chapter 2's vision, are universal in their nature. They cover the history from the Neo-Babylonian Empire until the end of time. This understanding or method of interpretation is called historicism. And I hold historicism, by the way. Daniel's chapter 8 elaborates more on the spiritual and religious characteristics of the little horn. The little horn symbolizes both the imperial and the papal Rome. Dr. Samuel Nunez explains that the little horn exists in three stages in the text, especially in verse 12, and thus it arises in three phases in history. Here we have these three stages or levels, or which occur in phases in history. The first phase was when the Romans attacked and destroyed the Temple of Jerusalem in AD 70. Secondly, the papacy of the Middle Ages destroys God's people and replaces God's truth, thus destroying it as well, and replacing God's salvation and the heavenly mediation of Jesus Christ with a settlement of an earthly mediation and salvation system. And thirdly, the papacy continues its similar actions after its wound is healed, by the way. And this was taken from Samuel Nunez's Narrative Structure of Daniel 8, a Text Linguistic Approach, Journal of Adventist Theological Society. And in his study, Nunez uses the theoretical model of text linguistics, which includes looking at the Hebrew verbal forms and clause types, which define the stages in narration. So, based on linguistic parallels between Daniel 8:11 to 14 and 9:26 and 27, like Samuel Nunez finds from the text, I would add that the abomination of desolation in Daniel 9:26 and 27 points to three stages as well. But we are not going to that in a closer detail here. Thus, the book of Daniel gives an example of an apocalyptic text which consists of an entity, the little horn, that exists in different layers. These layers are different phases in history, although the entity stays the same. This founds a precedent according to which an entity in an apocalyptic text can be applied to different phases in history, as long as the application stays inside of the parameters of Daniel 2 and 7, which point out the overall structure of history and the succession of world powers and their identities. So we cannot apply these levels any way we want. We have to stick into the structure, which the historical structure, which is already in the other chapters of the book, and also the whole Bible. We take the whole Bible and we interpret the Bible according to the Bible. The little horn power is the dragon / sea beast of Revelation 12 and 13, although the dragon is Satan as well, and the Antichrist, as was explained in chapter 1 of this book. In fact, Revelation 12 and 13 follow the triple-layered historical structure of Daniel 8. Revelation 12:13 refers to the early church, which is the first stage. Chapter 12, verses 14 to 15 speaks about the Dark Ages, which is the second stage. 12:16 is the transition from the Dark Ages into the time of eschatological remnant, and 12:17 depict the actual era of the eschatological remnant, which is the time when the Church of the Dark Ages has made its return, which is the third stage. And these stages, by the way, or phases, are very familiar Adventist interpretation of this chapter. In Revelation 12 and 13, we see indications to the Roman beasts / dragon's reign in the face of the imperial Rome in 12:3, in the face of the papal Rome during the Dark Ages in 13:5, papal Rome's reign after its return, after its healing of its mortal wound in 13:3a, and to both Papacy's reign before and after the striking and healing of the mortal wound in 13:1-2, verses 3b to 5a and 6 to 10. And by the way, also Ellen White applies Revelation 13 4 to 18 to both before and after the deadly wound / the healing of the wound. And you can see the references there. So it is significant that 13:5 can refer to both before and after the mortal wound, although the time prophecy is only for a specific time period. Actually, Revelation 12 to 17 can be applied to the time after the healing of the beast's wound, when God's people are similarly persecuted and have to run away from centers of societies. Therefore, Revelation 12 and 13 give another example of the layered structure. Moreover, Revelation 13:16 appears to point out that both the sea beast and the earth beast force the mark of the beast for the inhabitants of the world. Well, this is another thing. This is just a possibility how perhaps one can translate this, so this is not so important, but you can read that if you want. Then we go to the Olivet Discourse, the sixth seal, and the three woes. And we'll see how long we will go to three woes, because this whole book is about, this whole chapter is about the trumpets and the woes, so we're not going very far into that, but at least we take on the Olivet Discourse and we deal with the Olivet Discourse and the sixth seal. As Jesus answered to his disciples' question about the timing of the end of the world, he gave the so-called Olivet Discourse. In his speech, Jesus deals with the end time scenario by using a similar layered approach as Daniel did. By referring to the abomination of desolation mentioned by Daniel, Jesus points to the destruction of Jerusalem, the rise of Papal Rome, and the rise of Papal Rome after the healing of its wound, exactly as Daniel did. Now, what commonalities can we find between the situation of the Jews at the time of the early church and the papacy? The Jews of the first century abandoned Christ's righteousness. Acts 7:52. Mediation and authority. Christ's righteousness and sacrifice are infinitely pure only if God's law and character are infinitely pure. Thus, by abandoning Christ's righteousness and mediation, these particular Jews abandoned God's authority and covenant, since the abandoning of all of these are a crucial part of the abomination that causes desolation. The papacy followed and follows in the same steps of abomination, meaning that the same principle is behind its actions, as it changed the authority in righteousness and inheritance to itself. We don't have time here to prove that from the papacy's own documents. Maybe we should do that. Well, I don't remember if I have done that already. Anyway, both the ancient Jews in question and the papacy try to be justified by their own works, by human merits. Among Adventists, it is believed that the sixth seal's description, which is in connection to Matthew 24:29, refers to the signs of Lisbon earthquake in 1755, to the supernatural dark day of May 19, 1780, including the bloody moon at the following night, and to the great meteor shower of November 13, 1833. And you can read these from Great Controversy. The sixth seal of Revelation explains that these events indicate the beginning of the last end-time phase of history before the second coming of Christ. It appears that Matthew 24:29 serves as a marker, illustrating that 24:15 to 28 happens in the past, but that the verses also happen in the future because 29:15 depicts the healing of the sea beast's wound, and because verses 15 to 28 are connected to verses 1 to 14 as well. Matthew 24:4 to 14 and 15:26 have at least the following parallels: deception, verses 4 to 5, 11, 23 to 28, the persecution of the saints, and you can see the verses there, and the perseverance of the saints in the time of trouble, verses 13 to 22. In other words, tribulation of God's people in verses 15 to 28 is repeatable in history because the second coming of Christ, verses 23 to 31, has not happened yet. The seven trumpets are closely connected to woes of Revelation. The first and the second woe include time prophecies. With their time prophecies, they give markers of time, working together with the seven seals and the Olivet Discourse. The second woe entails the sixth trumpet and the vision of the angel with the scroll and the vision of the two witnesses. The second woe is parallel with the sixth seal and Matthew 24:29, marking the time of the late 18th century and the early 19th century because of the Lisbon earthquake, the dark day, and the meteor shower. The time window of transition is based on Revelation 10:6, which is part of the second woe, and an introduction to the third woe. According to an Adventist interpretation, Revelation 10:6 says that the time prophecies are ceased to exist during the last phase of the end times, because when the angel is about to sound the seventh trumpet, then the mystery of God is finished, as he preached to his servants, the prophets. Therefore, we have a rule that there will be no more time prophecies after 1844. In other words, the time window of transition is opened in 1755, in the Lisbon earthquake, and is closed in 1844. In church history, this was the great waiting time of the coming of the Lord, when massive awakenings happened. It was a time of great changes. Moreover, the vision of the two witnesses explains more about the time window of transition or the great changes, because it goes hand in hand with the other markers of time of the seals, the Olivet Discourse, Revelation 13 and Daniel 8. The sixth seal and Matthew 24:29 and the vision of the two witnesses explain that before the second rising of the abomination of desolation, the healing of the deadly wound, there would be the signs of Matthew 24:29 and the striking of the wound of the beast. Indeed, the French Revolution caused a mortal wound to the beast, as Napoleon's General Berthier captured Pope Pius VI in 1798, fulfilling the time prophecy of 1260 prophetic years of papal power of the Middle Ages. Again, it was a great time of changes. The healing of the beast's wound is a marker which tells that the beast brings the abomination of desolation 2 times. This is significant because the second woe elaborates the 2 papal phases of the abomination of desolation, before and after the striking of the beast's wound. The third woe, on the other hand, elaborates 3 phases, during the destruction of Jerusalem and before and after the striking of the beast's wound. These layers are further explained below in this chapter. Well, we're not going to go now to the woes, but here was some examples of the layers, what I was talking about. So there clearly are these layers according to which we can interpret the prophecies, and this brings clarity for the trumpets, for example. We are going to go into the trumpets in another part of this series, and this gives clarification for the 144,000 also, and we're going to go that also in another time, and to Daniel 11 also, and to that we are going to another time. But this time we are going to have a quick look at Revelation 17 and how it also refers to this kind of levels, if you will. Well, you'll see when I get to there. Again, in my book, same book and page 119. And well, I'm just going to jump into that. The identities of the harlot / Babylon and the scarlet beast in Revelation 17 demand some elaboration. Revelation 17, 9-11 introduces a historical succession of 8 kingdoms. There have been different kinds of interpretations of the succession, but we hold it to be the following. Number 1, Babylon. Number 2, Medo-Persia. Number 3, Macedonia, Greece. Number 4, pagan Rome. Number 5, Papal Rome. Number 6, France of the Revolution. Number 7, United States of America. And number 8, the Papal New World Order. The harlot does not represent the papacy only, because she reigns over many historical kingdoms and kings. So here we have these levels. However, the harlot does represent a church, because a woman symbolizes a church / God's people. Jeremiah 6:2. In fact, the end-time harlot church betrays God by not only uniting with the state, but controlling the state, of which the riding on the beast and the union with and control of the kings of the earth are depictions. And here you can see these important Bible verses there. The meta-symbol of Babylon is represented by the meta-symbol of the scarlet beast. Meta-symbol means a symbol which is above historical succession, staying as the same symbol even though history goes by. The partial parallelism of the dragon in Revelation 12 and the sea beast, Revelation 13, and the partial parallelism of the dragon and the scarlet beast in Revelation 17 means that the dragon is the meta-symbol / meta-beast, aka the scarlet beast, under which different kingdoms or kings or political powers have their successive turns. Thus, it is like the king of the north of Daniel 11, as it is a meta-symbol, under which different kingdoms or kings have their successive turns. Hence, a power in the succession, whenever it occurs, is the representative of the dragon in its own turn in history. It has been suggested that Egypt would be the first king in the succession. Some Adventists, for example, suggest this. But as you heard, I hold, and many others hold that the Babylon is the first king. Both Egypt and Babylon are depicted as a dragon, that's true. However, Babylon is the beginning of the king of the north, because Babylon is part of the sea beast, but Egypt is not. So this is coherent with Daniel 11, this interpretation of mine here. Although the scarlet beast illustrates the dragon in its phases through different kingdoms in history, the scarlet beast depicts the papacy also. So here we have these levels in the text, because of this meta-symbolism, which is clearly in, I think, at least in the Bible. This is quite common, if you will, or at least very familiar Hebrew thinking, which you can see from the Bible, how one thing can mean, one concept can include, for example, 2 meanings. And in this case, in the text, it appears as these levels. I call these levels. For example, the concept of God's righteousness means 2 things in according to Old Testament and New Testament. I now don't have the biblical passages in front of me, unless Romans 3. Um, God's righteousness means God's character, what He is righteous, and also His salvation, salvifical righteousness, how he imputes His righteousness, and this comes clear from Romans 3. So read Romans 3 at least. I don't have the other passages here. In Isaiah, this becomes clear. I don't remember the chapters or verses. So anyway, where was I? Yeah, Babylon is the beginning of the king of the north, because Babylon is part of the sea beast, but Egypt is not. When king of the north is the sea beast, by the way, it has the same. Well, we'll come to that. Although the scarlet beast illustrates the dragon in its phases through different kingdoms in history, the scarlet beast depicts the papacy. The scarlet beast represents the totality of the kingdoms all the way from Babylon, because this is the case in Revelation 13. Well, see verse 2 and compare the 7 heads of Daniel's 7 beasts with the 7 heads of the sea beast. The papacy is the climactic masterpiece of Satan, being even resurrected from the dead, as Satan mimics Christ. This is why it makes sense that only the papacy is pictured as the beast itself in Revelation 17, although being one of the 7 kings, while the other kingdoms are pictured only as kings. Ellen White as well, by the way, states that the prostitute of the scarlet beast is the papacy, linking it to the beast of chapter 13. So here we have this idea of climax, which is also biblical in many places, and it also appears in these levels what I'm talking about, and we will come to this in another part of the series when we go to the trumpets and to the 7 churches and to the 7 these seals, 7 seals. They all have a climactic unit, the 7th unit. The woes have also climactic unit, the 3rd unit, and the 3 attacks of Satan in Revelation 12, which we went through quickly, have also climactic unit. I think we just referred to it somehow quickly, how the same things happen. Yeah, we did. Same things happen in after the healing of the beast's wound. The same things happen to God's people after the healing of the wound. How they have to escape from the centers of society. So there we have that climactic. First unit is the climactic unit. So we see this same kind of climactic unit thing in Revelation 17, because the papacy, well, it is the 8th then, but 8th king. Well, it is also was it the 6th? Anyway, so this idea of climactic unit is clearly in the Bible. So this is why it makes sense that only the papacy is pictured as the beast itself in Revelation 17, although being one of the 7 kings, as I said already. So this was a short introduction, if you will, to these levels, which is a very, very important key for unlocking the prophecies, the apocalyptic prophecies, and bringing answers to our questions what we Adventists have. For example, Ellen White refers to Josiah Litch's interpretation of the 6th trumpet, and but also the trumpets seem to be well, when we go to the symbolism of the trumpets, they appear to be include more than just what Josiah Litch saw. So and they seem to be very permanent for today, very current also. So can these both be then true? Well, yes, I argue in my book. Josiah Litch's view, which Ellen White embraces, I think it's pretty clear in the Great Controversy, and the symbolic end time interpretation, if you will, if you want to call it that, both are true, because the trumpets also have these levels, these stages, phases in the fulfillment. But we'll come to that more later. And we have this question of 144,000. You know, when we read Revelation 7 and other places where we are talking, well, the Olivet Discourse, where we are talking about the tribulation, the great tribulation and time of trouble for God's people. In the Olivet Discourse, it clearly refers to all the three stages. The early Christians had their time of trouble when abomination of desolation was constructed, lifted up. They had their time of trouble when they were persecuted, and the early Jews abandoned Christ, and so they lifted up the abomination of desolation when they abandoned Christ and Christ's righteousness and so on, his mediation and so on. And during the Middle Ages, the same thing happened. The Papacy abandoned Christ's righteousness and mediation, and they started to persecute other Christians who do not believe like they do. The Papacy does. And after the healing of the Papacy's wound, which is closer and closer, coming closer and closer, and is partly, well, the healing is a process. It's going on all the time, and the beast's wound is almost healed now. Actually, the Papacy's wound. The same things happen again through the Sunday law. It will abandon Christ's righteousness, and well, it has abandoned that already. But the mark of Christ's righteousness, which is the Sabbath, it abandons that through Sunday, and even persecutes those who do not want to take its mark of its authority in defining righteousness and salvation, which is Sunday, by the way. It's a sacrament, by the way, Sunday for the Papacy. So they see it is a salvific. Well, anyway, so we clearly have these three times of trouble for God's people, three stages, three levels in the text, in the Olivet Discourse. So when we're talking about the 144,000 in Revelation 7, we also see there these three levels. Because, again, as Adventists, we have had this question, well, is the 144,000 the same entity as the great multitude with the white robes, all the saved? And I argue yes and no. So, because we have here again these levels and the climax. Well, now I'm going to the interpretation already, but just quickly, because I brought this out now, I have to explain this more. I will come to this with more detail later, but there are those stages. The climax is the final 144,000. It's the same time we have these three and we have the climax. It's just Hebrew thinking, and I think it's clear in the text, and this is so important key for us to understand these hard questions what we have as Adventists. So then Daniel 11, and we will come to that also later, because we have hard questions from Daniel 11. It's a very hard text and we have so many interpretations of it. Well, for example, there we have in Daniel 11 and was it 21 or something like that, and 22 and something like that, we have one depiction of the abomination of desolation, when we have this the crucifixion of Christ, and that time period when it refers to Daniel 9, also when in the same context Jerusalem was occupied, and you know, all of this abomination of desolation, AD 70. But then in Daniel 11:31, I think it was 31, somewhere there, we have this mentioning of abomination of desolation. So if we go chronologically, we have there 2 times mentioned that. However, it's the trouble is there, because in Daniel 11 and again somewhere there 20 or 21 or somewhere there just before this mentioning of Christ's crucifixion, at least, which by the way some interpret as the rising of the Papacy. Before that we have that mentioning of the contemptible person, and which is clearly parallel for the little horn in Daniel 8. So now, if the Papacy arises already in Daniel 11:21ish, then how can it arise again in 11:31-ish? So here we have a problem. So I think we again find explanation from these levels. They both refer to both, actually all the 3 stages of abomination of desolation. So we have these units of text in Daniel 11 which refer to the abomination of desolation in 3 stages, just like in the Olivet Discourse and in Daniel 8 and in Revelation 12 and 13 and 17. There's a different kind of climactic thing, but it goes hand in hand with Daniel 11, as we made clear, because we have this meta symbol, King of the North, in Daniel 11, and this scarlet beast in Revelation 17. So this was an introduction, and next time we're going to the trumpets, I think, or Daniel 11, we'll see. But anyway, thank you for listening. If someone listens, I really hope people would listen to these, because I think we have here clear biblical evidence says that we have these levels in the text, and we can explain better prophecies through this key which I have presented. God bless.